So one of the issues we've got at the resort in horticulture is that we have, how many shrubs do we have? Probably 300,000 shrubs or something, some enormous number. And each of those shrubs serves a purpose. There are shrubs in a more sort of the winery area that need to be formally pruned. There are shrubs that need to be informally pruned that mask things or that protect the water from our guests or that just add a look. Our plants here at Disneyland are part of the feel. They're part of the show. This thing wants to be 15 to 20 feet tall, right? More, 30 feet tall. This is not a shrub, right? We've got a tree here that is serving the purpose of a shrub. So over time, what we collectively do is we create big problems. So what we've done here is we've constantly pruned from the top, and so the interior is just a mass of dead branches and it's just open. It's got no future. And what we're trying to do today is talk to how we can prune these things instead of just from the top like this, as we tend to do, go into the middle of the shrub and remove some of the older growth. When we do that, we allow new growth to emerge from the base of the plant that then is much easier to manage. Younger growth is more prosperous, it fights insect infestations much more strongly, and it looks better. And again, in an informal setting, does it make sense to have a flat-topped thing? No. Tom Sawyer would not be pruning this. I'm guaranteeing that he would not. So this is an informal setting. This is Tom Sawyer, and there isn't a formal thing in here. But what ends up happening over time is that these shrubs that want to be sort of bigger, they want to be 12, 15 feet tall.
Hey, thank you.
Over time, we keep trying to contain them, bring them into scale with the site by bringing them down from the top. And after a couple of years, what ends up happening is you get this sort of superficial foliage on the top and then it dies in the middle. So what we're doing today is we're going in and we're actually digging into the interior of the plant and removing from the bottom some larger branches and opening up within. And so what'll happen is over time, we can rejuvenate that whole shrub, bring down the height, and not actually cause any of our visitors to see a bad looking shrub, because we are on show all the time. So we don't want to impact negatively the show, but at the same time we have horticulture to deal with, and horticulture changes. So we've got to respond over time. And you can see, you know, it takes some time, you have to figure out, it takes some expertise, you have to pull back the branches. Look at this big old shrub, this big old piece. Now, stand back everyone. This just got pulled out. Do you even notice that it's gone?
No.
Right? What you actually notice is that the height has been brought down. It's more appropriate in height. It hasn't had a negative impact whatsoever. But in the past, what we would have done is just cut it back from the top. As you can see on this old cut right here, we've just cut this back a series of times. Cut it back, cut it back, cut it back, cut it back. Over and over again, we've cut it back. And what a shrub will do in response is just send out all new shoots. So every time we make one cut, you get 2 to 3 new branches. Does everyone understand that? So look, we've cut it back and then it sent out 2 branches. We cut it back and then it sent out 2 new branches. And we keep doing that year after year after year, right? And so what ends up happening is this thing develops that's top heavy and filled with little branches on top and nothing on the bottom. And when you take it out, you're left with a pretty decent looking shrub. And so if we keep doing that every year, so every year we take out 1/3 of the old growth right down to the ground. In 3 years, you got a whole new shrub. In some shrubs, it's easy. Obviously this one here, which is a Viburnum tinus, it's pretty easy to do that in this kind of shrub. In some, it's more difficult. I mean, today we've discovered that there are shrubs it doesn't work as well for. But this kind of shrub, it's perfect. We've just recently planted this grouping of shrubs. We have a juniper, we have a Pittosporum, and a... What?
Photinia.
Okay, so let's talk about this. Photinias want to be 12 feet tall and 8 feet wide. This little guy here, we've just been spending time pruning that today. It wants to be 12 feet tall, 10 feet wide. This juniper will fill this space. So we should talk about how we do our plant choices and how we plant them. These also are very, very thickly planted. Now, we're on show, so our visitors, our guests, we want to have a really nice show right from day one. But we're creating a problem for ourselves here, just to think about that. But if I want to start right from the beginning with my pruning, I can do so. I can think about this juniper and the fact that these are going to be over here, and what am I going to do when the juniper comes over here? I'm going to go like that. I'm going to do that in a month or two, 2 months, a year. So instead, what if I came in here and actually removed this piece to the next branch? Smells good, I haven't done any real big damage. We know that I am going to be doing this over time. So instead of waiting until it's out of scale, what if I start right from the beginning? So I'm not going to do too much, but I know that over time this is going to get out here and I'm going to be heading it back. And what will end up happening is the thing that we repeatedly do. There'll be a wall of juniper, because we'll have headed it back and headed it back and headed it back time after time after time. And instead we want to preserve the natural form. So just go in there, remove some pieces over time, slowly, don't do this at the end of a month. Okay, so that's how I would treat a new shrub. So we've been learning today the way to go about bringing a shrub that's supposed to be sort of natural in look back to a natural look from a more sort of tightly pruned look. And so I wanted to point out this viburnum here. It's got that open feel. It had been trimmed like this for quite a while. But Mike today took this whole section out. It was in here, like that. It was a mess. We just lopped that out, one shrub branch right down to the base. And look at what we removed. All of these cuts, if you can see, when you cut it, you got 2 new growths. When you cut it, you get 2 new growths. When you cut it, you get 2 new growths. And what ends up happening is we create a situation where the shrub reacts by creating more and more and more shrubs, more branches, which then we have to cut back like that. So we're creating more work for ourselves. We are doing that. You got to come back here and you got to cut all this stuff down. I've just taken 5 cuts, 7 cuts, to do what I could have just done with 1 cut. Over long periods of time, we will save time in our pruning practices. If we don't continue creating a situation where we're creating new growth over and over and over again, but remove the oldest growth down to the ground. If every year you remove 1/3 of the oldest growth to the ground, in 3 years you got a whole new shrub. So this is going to save us time in the long term. In the short term, it's going to be a lot of work. But in the long term, and Disneyland is going to be here for another couple hundred years, it's going to save us time.